Ever felt like you're surrounded by a force field of social repulsion? It's not a superpower, but a common human experience. Sometimes, without even realizing it, we cultivate habits that push people away. These aren't just minor annoyances. They're deep-rooted patterns that can wreak havoc on our relationships and how others perceive us. Welcome to Stoic Life Recipe, your guide to navigating life's challenges with wisdom and grace. Today, we're diving into 4 toxic habits that can sabotage your connections. But don't worry, you're not alone. We've all been there at some point. The good news? By recognizing these patterns and making conscious changes, we can foster stronger, more fulfilling relationships and reclaim the respect we've lost along the way. So, let's get started. Have you ever found yourself gossiping, being unreliable, interrupting others, or constantly complaining? If so, you're not alone. These behaviors can erode trust, damage respect, and leave you feeling isolated. In this video, we'll explore the root causes of these habits and offer practical strategies for overcoming them. But before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Share your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever struggled with any of these toxic habits? What strategies have you found effective for overcoming them? Let's learn from each other and build a supportive community here at Stoic Life Recipe. Habit 1. Gossiping. Let's start with one of the most common yet most destructive habits, gossiping. Gossip is like that snack you know you shouldn't eat, but can't resist because it's easy to indulge. At first it feels harmless, maybe even a bit fun. After all, who doesn't enjoy a little juicy tidbit about someone else's life, right? But here's the hard truth. Gossiping is a silent relationship killer. It erodes trust, undermines respect, and leaves everyone involved feeling a little worse about themselves. Gossip often starts small, disguised as concern for others or casual chit-chat. However, the reality is that once we engage in gossip, we are subtly eroding the very foundation of our relationships, trust. And without trust, relationships become fragile and superficial. The Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus once said, "Keep silence for the most part, and speak only when you must, and then briefly." Gossip not only wastes time, but is also a reflection of our inability to focus on our own lives. Instead, we meddle in the affairs of others, letting distractions pull us away from personal growth. When we gossip, we damage the well of trust. People start to wonder what we're saying behind their backs, and that seed of doubt can grow into full-blown mistrust. But why do we gossip in the first place? It's often rooted in our insecurities. We deflect attention from our own flaws by focusing on the shortcomings of others. It feels good, momentarily, to elevate ourselves by pushing others down, but this high is short-lived. Gossip might give you a fleeting sense of connection with others, but it's a connection built on negativity. You end up fostering bonds with people who thrive on judgment and criticism, not genuine support. I remember a time in college when gossiping seemed like the easiest way to bond with my friends. We'd sit around, dissecting people's lives, passing judgment like it was nothing. One day, I found out that a girl in our group, let's call her Emily, had a crush on a guy. Instead of keeping that private, I shared it with my friends, thinking it was just harmless banter. We laughed about it, but when Emily found out, the look of hurt on her face was devastating. She stopped hanging out with us, and eventually she drifted away entirely. That incident sticks with me because it made me realize how deeply harmful gossiping can be. It wasn't just a careless conversation, it had real consequences. Emily didn't just lose trust in me, she lost a group of friends, and for what? A momentary laugh at someone else's expense. The Stoic philosopher Seneca tells us, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Gossip is one way we waste not only time, but also the precious connections we have with others. Instead of indulging in idle talk, we should focus on building people up and fostering relationships based on trust and understanding. But how do we stop? It's tough to break this habit, especially if it's something ingrained in your social circles. One way to start is to shift the conversation. The next time you're with a group and gossip comes up, steer the discussion towards more productive or positive topics. If that feels too uncomfortable, simply refrain from contributing. You'd be surprised at how much silence speaks. Slowly, you'll notice that people will begin to respect you for not participating in those negative exchanges. If you find yourself tempted to gossip, ask yourself, is this conversation adding value to my life? Or am I tearing someone else down just to feel better about myself? Gossip might feel like a quick way to bond with others, but it's a shortcut that leads nowhere. Instead, focus on meaningful conversations that uplift, not destroy. Habit 2. Being unreliable. The second toxic habit that can sabotage your relationships is being unreliable. Think about it. How often have you made a promise only to not follow through? Maybe you said you'd show up to a friend's party but cancelled at the last minute. Or maybe at work, you committed to a project but delivered it late. These moments might seem small, but over time they build up, chipping away at the respect people have for you. Being reliable is more than just showing up. It's about integrity. It's about keeping your word even when it's inconvenient. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Your word is a reflection of your character. When you constantly break promises, even small ones, people start to doubt your integrity. They stop trusting you, and respect erodes little by little. Why does reliability matter so much? At its core, it's about demonstrating respect for yourself and for others. When you commit to something and you follow through, you're showing that you respect the other person's time, energy, and expectations. It's easy to make promises, but keeping them requires effort and sometimes sacrifice. This is where true respect is built. I used to be the flaky friend. I'd make plans, then cancel at the last minute, thinking my friends would understand because life happens. But one time, a close friend was hosting a birthday party she had spent weeks planning. I promised I'd be there. On the day of the party, I got caught up in something else and just decided not to go. I didn't even tell her until hours after the party had started. She was disappointed, and I knew I had messed up. Our friendship was never quite the same after that. In professional settings, being unreliable can be even more damaging. I had a boss who once told me, "Your work is good, but people don't know if they can count on you." That hit hard. It was a wake-up call that being reliable is key in both personal and professional relationships. Reliability shows people that you value their time and that you can be trusted to follow through. How do you improve reliability? First, don't overcommit. Know your limits and be honest with yourself and others about what you can realistically handle. This requires self-awareness and humility. It's tempting to want to please everyone, but spreading yourself too thin will result in failure to meet expectations. Second, if something does come up and you can't follow through, communicate early. Let people know as soon as possible. People are far more understanding when you give them the courtesy of time to adjust their expectations. Being reliable isn't about being perfect. It's about showing others that you respect their time and effort as much as your own. Habit 3. Interrupting others. Let's face it, interrupting people is something we're all guilty of at some point. You're in a conversation, you have an idea, and you just can't wait to share it. So, you jump in, cutting the other person off. It seems harmless, but in reality, it sends a very clear message. What I have to say is more important than what you're saying. Interrupting might not seem as obviously toxic as gossiping or unreliability, but it's equally damaging. It shows a lack of respect for the other person's thoughts and feelings. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Listening is an essential part of communication. When we interrupt, we aren't listening. We're just waiting for our turn to speak. This habit can make people feel unheard and undervalued. We live in a fast-paced world where we're constantly encouraged to be quick, assertive, and vocal. But sometimes, in our eagerness to contribute, we forget the importance of listening. There's a tendency to think that jumping in with our opinion shows we're engaged, but the truth is, it often shows the opposite. It shows we're not giving the other person the respect of fully hearing them out. I used to think interrupting was a way to show enthusiasm. If I had an idea during a meeting, I'd jump in, thinking it would show that I was engaged. But one day, during a brainstorming session at work, my manager stopped the meeting and told me directly, "You need to let people finish their thoughts." I was embarrassed, but it was a lesson I needed to hear. My interruptions weren't helping. They were shutting people down and killing the flow of conversation. So what's the fix? Practice active listening. When someone is speaking, focus entirely on what they're saying. Resist the urge to formulate your response while they're still talking. Give them your full attention. Once they've finished, take a moment to gather your thoughts before you respond. This simple act of patience and respect can dramatically improve your communication skills and deepen your relationships. Habit 4. Complaining. Finally, let's talk about complaining. We all need to vent sometimes, but constant complaining is a toxic habit that can drain the energy of everyone around you. Complaining focuses on problems rather than solutions. It makes you seem like someone who's stuck in negativity, and over time, people will avoid you because they don't want to be dragged into that negative space. We all know that one person who always seems to have something negative to say. No matter how good the situation might be, they'll find the flaw. Maybe it's the coworker who gripes about every little thing, or the friend who always has a complaint ready the moment they walk in the door. Eventually, you start to avoid these people because their negativity is contagious. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Complaining is often a sign that we're focused on things we can't control. Instead of constantly airing grievances, the Stoics advise us to shift our focus to what we can change. It's important to distinguish between expressing genuine concerns and habitual complaining. The former is necessary for resolving issues and improving situations. The latter is unproductive and self-destructive. When we focus too much on what's wrong, we blind ourselves to what's right, to opportunities, and to solutions. I used to complain a lot, especially about work. I'd go on and on about how management was disorganized or how the workload was unfair. At first, people would listen sympathetically, but after a while, I noticed that people started avoiding me. I had become the complainer, and people didn't want to be around that energy. It wasn't until a close friend told me, "You're really negative these days," that I realized how much this habit was affecting my relationships. The Stoics believed in the power of gratitude. Instead of focusing on what's wrong, we should focus on what's right. I started practicing this in my own life. Instead of complaining about my job, I looked for ways to make it better. If I felt undervalued, I took steps to improve my performance and communicated that to my boss. It wasn't an overnight fix, but it made a difference. I became more positive, and people responded to that energy shift. Conclusion. So, there you have it, 4 toxic habits that can make people lose respect for you, distance themselves, or even cut ties. The good news is that with self-awareness and small shifts in behavior, you can overcome these habits. Stoicism teaches us to be more mindful of our actions, to value integrity, and to focus on what we can control. By applying these principles to our daily interactions, we can build stronger, healthier relationships with the people around us. Now that you know these habits, it's time to take action. Which of these habits do you struggle with the most? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Remember, self-improvement is a journey, and we're all in this together. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom to help you live a better life. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay grounded, stay focused, and as always, live with purpose.